Sorry about that, everybody. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the GSMC Sports Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Tuesday, March 18th. We have a lot to cover on the show today. Before I get into all that, I just want to remind you guys, as always, tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. Makes the show more lively, more entertaining. Between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers, we appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day. So any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to continue our Aaron Rodgers watch. So we are going to talk about the latest reports that we've been hearing on where he could possibly go, where is he going to sign, where would he like to sign, or could he end up retiring? We'll get into that whole conversation in just a second. We'll also talk some NBA. We will talk about the Dallas Mavericks. The fans continue to just show their frustrations over the team's decisions over the last couple of months with the Luka trade. And we'll also talk about the 76ers shutting down Paul George for the rest of the season as well. And, we'll talk about some of the matchups tonight as well, some of the NBA action. And also we got the first games of the March Madness tournament starting tonight as well. So we'll take a look at those matchups too. Then in the third part of the show, we'll talk about Kirk Cousins. So the Falcons, they ended up keeping him past Saturday, and that now made his signing bonus guaranteed. So we'll talk about what the Falcons plan on doing with Kirk Cousins. They want to keep him on the roster, but we'll get into the conversation of whether he's going to remain with the team or at some point they are going to let him go or trade him to another team, if that's even possible. So we'll get into that. I know I did say we'll recap the Tokyo series the following day, but we'll talk about the game in the fourth part of the show. I mean, we have to. It's the start of the baseball season. We'll get into it, what happened. Nothing really major. Dodgers did pick up the win, but we'll talk about I'll give you my thoughts on the game and what transpired during that. And then we will continue our season overviews of every team in the NFL. Today we will be covering the New England Patriots. So let's get into the first topic, which is talking about Aaron Rodgers and what's going on with the latest on that front. So, from everything that we've been seeing as of late, it's being reported that he wants to go to the Vikings, allegedly. Wants to sign with the Vikings. And, from what I've been seeing also, and you guys have been seeing the same thing as well, that the Vikings are kind of, in the middle with it. Whether or not to bring him in or not. Because you do have J.J. McCarthy, who the Vikings, they traded up to get him. And they look at him as their future. However, he is coming off of a meniscus injury. And he might not necessarily be ready for the start of the season next year. It's possible that, maybe the Vikings bring in someone other than Aaron Rodgers to just start the season and then the first quarter of the season, and then you give the ball to J.J. McCarthy. But if you bring in Aaron Rodgers, your intention is, hey, we're going to bring this guy in and he's going to start for us, and hopefully we could go to the promised land with him. That's why you make this move. Now, a lot of people are going to shake their head and say, no, that's not going to happen. Now, for me, I think if the Vikings were to bring in Aaron Rodgers, I think that would be a great spot for him. They made improvements on the offensive line because that was the weakness on the offense last year. There's familiarity there with Aaron Jones, and they just traded for Jordan Mason. So I think that's going to be a nice duo that they have there over in Minnesota. And then, of course, the embarrassment of riches with pass catchers. This would be one of the best supporting casts Aaron Rodgers has ever had if he were to go to Minnesota. And they're backed by a good defense. And they made improvements on that side of the ball as well, signing a couple of defensive linemen. And they're not done yet. There's always the draft, too. So, and we've talked about this, when you look at the teams that have interest or supposedly have interest, the Vikings are at the top. The Vikings are the closest team to getting to a championship and winning a championship. And that's what Aaron Rodgers wants to do. But you go to the Steelers. All right, the Steelers are a playoff team. But do we think that with Aaron Rodgers, are they going to take that next step? Now, I think, to be honest, if Aaron Rodgers was the quarterback last year for the Steelers, I don't think the Steelers lose 5 straight games. But then again, you could say, well, look what happened when he was with the Jets last year. But it's 2 different teams. So the Steelers would be number 2, and then you got the Giants, who have a young team. They have one of the youngest teams in the NFL, but they're not ready to compete yet, especially in their division. I mean, wherever he decides to go, if he continues to play, the NFC North is a tough division. The AFC North is going to be tough, and the NFC East is tough. So there's really no soft landing wherever he decides to go in terms of the teams in the division. But you're also hearing reports that if the Vikings don't bring him in, instead of picking either the Steelers or the Giants, he might just opt to retire. Or he could wait it out if an injury happens to a team that he could latch on to and take over as a starter. That's also an option. Now, for me, I hope it's not, because I want to just see him play. I want to continue to see him play every Sunday. The NFL is better with Aaron Rodgers in it. In a lot of people's eyes, they'll disagree with that. And that's fine, because there are a lot of people out there that are not fans of Aaron Rodgers. And I made the joke yesterday in our production meeting that since I've taken over this show and Matt has taken over the football show, the football podcast has gone from being a somewhat pro Aaron Rodgers show to a complete anti Aaron Rodgers show, because he's a Steelers fan and he does not want to see the Steelers bring in Aaron Rodgers. And he makes a lot of valid points, and I understand it from his perspective. I would like to see him go there just because my dad's a Steelers fan, so there's rooting interest there, and obviously the Giants as well would be, that'd be a perfect situation, because that's my favorite football team. Although I've been very disappointed with them over the last several years, and to see one of my favorite players play for that team, listen, at this point I don't really care. I would take Aaron Rodgers for 1 year. They draft a young quarterback. He sits behind Rodgers. I'd be okay with that. But it's a very interesting situation, and you just have many people that are impatient, mainly the media. Adam Schefter, saying, why doesn't he just make a decision? We're playing the waiting game. It's not up to us. He's going to take the time to make his decision, and we'll find out soon enough. But there's people saying it could take months, and so be it. Look, I'm impatient too. But if that's what he's doing, there's nothing we can do about it. But it could just be because he's waiting on what the Vikings want to do. And I know people talk about Rodgers and, affecting the culture. Like, if the Vikings bring in Aaron Rodgers, is he going to ruin the culture? Well, if he's there for 1 year, I don't think you have to worry about it. I think if Rodgers is brought into Minnesota, he's going to know what his role is. He's going to go out there and play football. Yeah, he'll probably, yeah, not probably, he will go on the McAfee show. But you just got to tune that out. You know, when he was going on the McAfee show, when he first started doing that, he won back-to-back MVPs. You know, and then he goes to the Jets, and I was hoping, you know, he would turn that team around, but obviously he did not. And he is part of the blame, but there's a lot more blame to go around than just him. So, you know, and then of course 2024 happens, and yeah, it was not a good year. Not a good year for the team. So, yeah, if he goes on the McAfee show while he's the Vikings quarterback, yeah, you know, some people will be annoyed by it, but you know, I remember, you know, as a Giant fan, Eli Manning would make weekly appearances on sports talk radio. You know, quarterbacks do that. Now, obviously, it's a little bit different because, you know, the McAfee show is a different kind of sports show. It's not a traditional sports radio show. And obviously, they don't just talk about sports, they talk about other things. So that's kind of like the extra stuff. But we'll see what happens. I hope he doesn't retire. I hope he does continue to play somewhere because I do think he could still play. But I know there's a lot of people that can't wait for him to retire. And if he does, to me, it's going to be sad because, again, it's another great quarterback, you know, from the 2010s that's going to call it a career. But hopefully he continues to play and he gets another shot. So we're going to take our first break now. And then when we come back, we'll talk some basketball. We'll talk about the Mavericks. We'll talk about the 76ers. We'll get into some of the other NBA action as well. And also, we'll take a look at the matchups for tonight to start off the March Madness tournament. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast, and for the second part of the show, we are going to now talk some NBA, some basketball in general, mainly talk about the Mavericks and the 76ers. So the Mavericks fans just continue to voice their frustrations. The Fire, Nico chants have really made themselves known. And, you know, as a Yankee fan, I know what it's like to have your fan base chanting for your general manager to be fired. Now, what Nico Harrison did is inexcusable, honestly. The Mavericks, they could tell you whatever when it comes to the Luka trade. But you don't trade that kind of a player. You don't do that. This was your franchise player This was your guy that you were going to have for the next 10 to 12 years. He's now into his NBA career. He's in his prime, and you just trade him like that. And you trade for a guy. Now, Anthony Davis is a good player, but Anthony Davis is also an older player and continues to deal with injuries. And now, look at what's going on. The Lakers are going to be a team that could make a deep playoff run, and the Mavericks might be a team that doesn't even make the play-in. Because right now, when you look at the standings, now, we haven't really talked about the standings as of late, because all the NFL stuff that's been going on. But if you take a look at the Western Conference standings right now, the number 2 seed at the moment is actually the Houston Rockets. They're the number 2 seed. Now, the Nuggets are tied with them. Rockets, I guess, have the tiebreaker over them. Then you have the Lakers as the 4th seed, and they're tied with the Grizzlies, who are at the 5. Warriors are at the 6th seed. Warriors actually lost to the Nuggets last night, and the Nuggets were without Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. Russell Westbrook, I think, had a triple-double last night. Yeah, he had a triple-double last night. See, Russ could still do it, at times. I know people have their complaints about him and how he plays the game. Also, he actually really did not shoot the basketball well last night. He shot 5 of 18, but still, 12 points, 12 rebounds, 16 assists. But the Nuggets got the win. Warriors ended up losing. So that's now the second game that they've lost since they acquired Jimmy Butler. But anyways, Mavericks right now are at the 10. And with everything that's gone on with the Phoenix Suns find themselves one game back of the play-in. One game back. And honestly, it would not be that crazy to see the Suns pass the Mavericks and the Mavericks just completely fall out of the playoff picture. It has been a rough month for this team. And not only because of the Luka trade, but also just because they don't have enough guys. They don't have enough guys to field the whole team. You got guys getting hurt left and right. PJ Washington, who, commented on the Fire Nico trades, he recently just came back. I mean, he's frustrated by the fans constantly doing this. They don't want to hear this, but you're going to hear it for a long time. And especially when Luka comes back, because Luka is going to make his return to Dallas when they play each other. And that's going to be must-see TV. But, you got Lively out, Gafford, Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving tore his ACL. You're missing all your guys. We never really got to see this team at full strength post-Luka. You're not going to see it. And, people are going to say that there was now a hex that's been put over the, I'm using a WandaVision term, a hex over the Mavericks, because how do you do that? Now, if Nico Harrison does get fired at some point, they are going to throw a parade. They're going to be celebrating in the streets like they won the Super Bowl, like they won the NBA Finals. Now, I don't think it's going to be to the extent of what the Eagles fans did when the Eagles won the Super Bowl, but they're going to throw some kind of celebration if he does end up getting let go. And there's no indication of that yet, but could happen. Could definitely happen. But, yeah, it has not been a good stretch for the Mavericks. And I think fans just want this season to be over. And another trade that they made also, they traded Quentin Grimes to the 76ers, who we're going to talk about in a second. This was 3 days after the Doncic trade. In 16 games with the 76ers, Quinn Grimes is averaging 19.9 points per game, five rebounds per game, and 3.8 assists. All of a sudden, he's starting to look great. Former Knick as well. The Mavericks acquired Caleb Martin in the trade, and he's only played in 5 games because of a hip injury. So the Mavericks just can't do anything right. So yeah, they could find themselves just completely on the outside looking in. And it's just amazing because this team made the NBA Finals last year. They were in the finals. Now, did they win it? No. But they were in it. And then they were just like, yeah, we're going to just trade our best player. We're going to try something different. And everything just fell apart. So they better hope, the front office better hope that this team is healthy next year. I mean, I don't even know what's going to happen with Kyrie. Kyrie, I don't think will be back by the start of the season, right? So already you're starting without one of your players. But will we ever see this team at full strength with all the moves that they've made? I don't know. I don't know. And you got to feel for Jason Kidd. He's doing the best he can with what he's got. But, again, they don't have enough. So, it's just, it's a tough situation. And then we'll talk about the 76ers. So, again, going to sound like a broken record, but another team that's just been a disappointment, but for other reasons. You know, you bring in Paul George and really just did not have a good year. They ended up shutting him down for the rest of the season, and they're trying to get, a top lottery pick. And again, if it's outside of the top 6, the Thunder would take that pick, as if the Thunder don't have enough picks. So this is a lost season for them. They're hoping, I think the fans are just hoping, hey, just let's get a top pick. Let's get a good player out of this draft and go from there. But you got Paul George on the team for 3 more years, and you shut down Joel Embiid and you have him for 4 more years. And I did bring this up when we talked about the Sixers on one of my previous shows, but yeah, you could get one of those top players. And in a perfect world, everybody comes back healthy next year and you have a bounce back year. But who's to say these guys don't get hurt again? Now, again, it could go the other way and everything works out, but Joel Embiid he's destined to miss games. So he's going to miss games next year. Now, I think the Sixers, if they can get a top player in the draft, you got Tyrese Maxey, Paul George can bounce back next year. You could be a team that competes for a playoff spot. Definitely. And Joel Embiid, if, he's able to make it through the season, misses some time, but here and there, but if he's able to make it through the whole season and have more of an impact, yeah, you should definitely have the Sixers in the playoffs next year, in my opinion. But, who knows? This season's just been a complete disaster. And, I look at it and say, well, you have Tyrese Maxey you could build around. And who's going to take on these contracts? If, let's say, you would want to move off of them and beat in Paul George. And you got to hope that, Tyrese Maxey, you want to build around him, but you don't want to see him go anywhere else. He feels like he, can't win with the Sixers. And Tyrese Maxey's a really good player. So we'll see what happens. But, yeah, not good on the Sixers front. They're just hoping at this point, you tank and you get a top draft pick, hopefully. Because right now they're 13th in the Eastern Conference. They're 23-45. But if they If they finish outside the top 6 and the Thunder end up getting their pick, yeah, that's not going to be good. But for the NBA action tonight, so we got actually the Bucks and the Warriors will be playing at 10 o'clock Eastern time. You also got the Clippers and the Cavaliers trying to get back on track after their winning streak came to an end the other day against the Magic. And then you also have the Hawks and the Hornets. I don't think anybody really super invested in that game. And then you also have the Nets and the Celtics as well. Last night, the Knicks picked up a win. I said the Nuggets picked up a win over the Warriors. Warriors losing their second game with Jimmy Butler. Lakers defeated the Spurs. Luka last night, 21 points. Austin Reeves, he has played really well in recent games. You look at his stats over the course of the last 6 games. 16 points, 17 points, 28 against the Bucks, 37 against the Nuggets, and that was without, I think, was that also without Luka? Either way, 37 points, 28 against the Suns, and then 30 against the Spurs. He's been playing really well. And he's really stepped up with LeBron being out. And he's a good player. He's a good player for them. Actually also had the Pacers defeating the Timberwolves in overtime. Obi Toppin, former Knick, 34 points in the game. There was no Tyrese Halliburton in this game. Looks like the Pacers are missing a handful of guys last night, but they picked up the win. Anthony Edwards had 38 points for the Timberwolves. So that's kind of where things are there in the NBA. And then tonight, when you look at college basketball, so we have 2 16 seeds going at it. You got St. Francis against Alabama State. And then, well, that game starts at 6:40 p.m. Eastern Time on True TV. And then this is the better game of the two. The 2 11 seeds, you got UNC against San Diego State. The Aztecs against the Tar Heels. So that's a big game. And then tomorrow, we went over this yesterday, but you got American against Mount St. Mary's, and then you have Xavier against Texas. And then everything starts. Everything starts on Thursday. First game, Creighton against Louisville. So be ready. I got to put my brackets together. I'm in a few bracket groups. Actually, more than that. So I'm looking forward to it. Should be fun. So before we go to break, just want to remind you guys once again, I am not reminding you about Aaron Rodgers, but I do want to remind you to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So when we come back from our next break, we will talk about Kirk Cousins and what's going on there in Atlanta. So we will get into that when we come back from our next break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we are now going to talk about the Falcons and Kirk Cousins. So, amongst all the chaos of all the quarterbacks that have changed teams, or, the Rodgers watch and Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston met with the Giants, Joe Flacco, all these, Daniel Jones signing with the Colts, Sam Darnold, you name it. Kirk Cousins, not a free agent, but a quarterback that could be available at some point. Now, what was interesting is Saturday, if the Falcons kept Kirk Cousins, which is what they ended up doing, his signing bonus would become fully guaranteed for the 2026 season. And there was some speculation, I would imagine, that the Falcons maybe would make a move. So that wouldn't be the case. Well, Kirk Cousins is still on the roster. And the Falcons have constantly been saying that they want to keep him on the team. And that their plan is to have him back up Michael Penix Jr. Now, just because they're saying that now does not mean when we get to June, when we get to the summer months, that a move doesn't happen. Now, if the Falcons trade Cousins before June 1st, they would face a $37.5 million deal with a $37.5 million dead cap hit, and they would save only $2.5 million for the 2025 season. If they trade him after June 1st, they would save $27.5 million, but still have $12.5 million in dead cap money. So a move could maybe happen when we get to the summer, or close to it. Now, Cousins met with Arthur Blank. I would imagine he wants to start somewhere. And I think Kirk Cousins can still start. Now, we were kind of unaware of other injuries he was dealing with, because he mentioned that he got injured in the Saints game, injured his throwing shoulder. And that's why sometimes some of those passes, take a look at the Chargers game, because I bring up that game a lot, because he threw 4 picks in that game. That was not a great performance by him. But I also think he was a guy that he lost confidence. But I do think he could still start. And I think, again, another year removed from the Achilles injury, you will see a better Kirk Cousins. And maybe he just wasn't a good fit for the Falcons. A lot of people talk about Cleveland because Kevin Stefanski and Cousins have had a relationship. So that could work. Maybe he goes to the Giants. If the Giants don't get Rodgers, they don't get Russell Wilson. Maybe Cousins is an option, but also you're hearing that they could bring in Joe Flacco. And they met with Jameis Winston. Listen, I am all for the Giants bringing in Jameis Winston. And I did talk to my friend about it because he's a big Jameis fan, but he said, yeah, the Giants maybe will win 2 games that they're not supposed to, but they'll probably still end up with 5 wins. And I'm like, yeah, but Jameis would make things exciting at the quarterback position. But I think one way or another we will see Kirk Cousins in a different uniform in 2025 at some point. Because is he really going to go the whole year as the backup to Michael Penix? Now, I don't think it's a bad thing. Like, for the Falcons, I don't think it's bad you have Cousins as a backup. But for Kirk Cousins himself, is he going to want to be a backup? I don't think so. Kirk Cousins wants to start. Now, you're taking a bit of a gamble if you bring in Cousins, because he can continue on that trajectory from last season. From last season going into 2025. So yeah, Falcons, you would hope, take on most of his salary, because, if you bring in Kirk Cousins and you're taking on a big chunk of his deal, and he doesn't perform for you, that's, fans of whatever team ends up getting him are not going to be happy, and the organization is not going to be happy that you took a chance on that. But yeah, I do think he's going to end up on a different team. I have no theories, I have no sources on that, but I really do think he will go somewhere else. Especially like if an injury happens too. Similar to Aaron Rodgers, if he decides, if Minnesota doesn't want him and he opts to just say, you know what, I'm good, and he steps away. If, quarterback gets injured, they could say, well, Kirk Cousins is a backup on the Falcons. Maybe we could, bring him in. Now, I think Kirk Cousins would want to go to a team that, has a chance to win. I don't think he wants to go somewhere where, it's a rebuild or the team is not even close to competing. He wants to end up in a good situation. But we'll have to wait and see. But I just think, it's something that could create a distraction because, you have Michael Penix there. He's going to be your starting quarterback going forward. And now you're going to have him with Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is going to be hoping. I mean, not necessarily, because they do have everything that we've heard, they get along. But Kirk Cousins is probably hoping somewhere in the back of his mind that Michael Penix struggles and they throw him back in if he still remains with the Falcons. You don't want that. You want to commit to your young quarterback. I like what I saw from Michael Penix in that brief time that we saw him. Now we got to see what he looks like over the course of a full season. But you saw the Falcons looked like a much different offense when he stepped in. The arm talent's there. I know you turn the ball over. You got to work on that, obviously, but he didn't play that much. There's growing pains. But there's young talent on this team. Drake London had a good year. Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts. We'll see if this is the year he finally breaks out. We've been saying that for the last 5 years or so. I'm curious to see how this Falcons team will look next year with Penix throughout the whole year. But this is something that's going to continue for months with Kirk Cousins. We'll see what ends up happening if he gets flat out released. Maybe. If the Falcons end up doing that at some point. It's just there's several ways this can go. Now, I think one way or another he will end up on another team. It depends on whether they're going to trade him or he's released. I think teams might just, unless they're super desperate, if he wants to be released and they can't find a trade partner, then they're going to release him. So, we'll see what happens. We'll see if he ends up on the team going into next year. If, he begs for his release and they grant him that, or if he ends up being traded. But the Falcons play in a winnable division. The best team right now is the Bucs. You got the Falcons. The Panthers are going to be better. The Saints, I don't know what to, they're not going to be very good. Maybe with Kellen Moore, things are going to be different. If the team can maybe stay healthy, they win a few more games, but Saints really, in everybody's eyes, I think you need to rebuild. That's what you need to do at this point. So, and Cameron Jordan, made it known that he's going to be returning to the Saints, and he's one of the faces of the franchise. Been there a long time, but yeah, it's time to go in a different direction with the Saints. But let me know what you guys think about Kirk Cousins. Where do you think he could end up? Do you think the Falcons will eventually cut ties with him? Or do you think he's going to be the backup the whole year next year? I really don't think that is going to happen. I think for Cousins, he wants to go somewhere else and be able to start. But who knows? Maybe he is the backup the whole year. So, we're going to take our next break. When we come back, we'll talk about how the MLB season opener went between the Cubs and the Dodgers. What happened in the game. We'll get into all that when we come back from our next break. It's good to have baseball back. It really is. Now, I know I originally said that I wasn't going to talk about the game. But, when I figured, hey, season started. Let's talk about it. We'll do the same thing tomorrow. We'll recap the game the best way we can. But it just, it depends on where you are in the world. But, for me, who's on the East Coast, 6 o'clock in the morning, yeah, could have got up, could have watched it. I actually did get up like an hour after it started, and I checked the score, and the Dodgers were winning. So I did take a look at it, but I didn't, turn on my TV just to see what was going on. But yeah, we will discuss it, and a week from today. Well, no, not a week from today. A week from Thursday, everybody else starts. So I am really excited about that. But we will talk about the game when we come back. We'll get into what happened when we return. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we are now going to get into talking about the season opener for Major League Baseball and what happened in the game. Anything memorable? Nothing super memorable. I mean, other than the fact that the game is being played in Japan. I mean, this was just the first game of the year. Pitching matchup was Yoshinobu Yamamoto against Shota Imanaga. Now, for Yamamoto, he went 5 innings, 3 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts. And then the Dodgers handed it off to their bullpen, which was lights out last season, and that continued in this game. Anthony Banda made an appearance. Actually, Dodgers relief pitching didn't give up any hits. So, yeah, you had Banda, you had Ben Kasperias, Blake Trinan, and then Tanner Scott, who they acquired from the Cubs. Well, I almost said the Cubs. They acquired, they signed him this offseason. And he spent some time with the Marlins and the Padres. And then for the lineup for the Dodgers, Ohtani had 2 hits. Kike Hernandez had a hit. Tommy Edman, Will Smith, Michael Conforto, Miguel Rojas as well. For the Cubs, like I said, only 3 hits. Couple of errors in the game for the Cubs, so that's not good. But yeah, Kyle Tucker in his Cubs debut, 0 for 4 on the day. Seiya Suzuki, he went 0 for 4 as well. Ian Happ had a hit. Dansby Swanson had a hit. And the catcher, Miguel Amaya, had a hit as well. Cubs actually were leading after the second inning, and that was on a double by Miguel Amaya. He doubled in Dansby Swanson, who led off the inning with a single. But then the Dodgers put up a 3-spot in the 5th inning. You had Andy Pages walk, Ohtani singled, Edman singled, Teoscar Hernandez grounded into a force out. That led to another run, and then Will Smith singled as well. So that's where the Dodgers got most of their runs. And then Teoscar later in the game, he singled to make it 4-1. And then looking at the Cubs pitching, so Imanaga didn't give up any runs, but he did walk 4 batters. Actually didn't give up a hit either in his 4 innings of work. I had 2 strikeouts, but they did put in Ben Brown, and he went 2 2/3, 4 hits, 3 runs. 2 of them were earned, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts. They also had Eli Morgan make an appearance. He went an inning and a third, gave up a hit and a strikeout. And then you also had the former Dodger, Ryan Brazier. He pitched an inning, gave up 2 hits, 1 run, 1 walk, and 1 strikeout. But yeah, nothing crazy happened in this game. There were no long balls in the game. But Yamamoto was sharp. Looks like I saw that Imanaga wasn't sharp, but he had 4 walks, but he didn't give up a hit. So hey, look, it's the first game. There's nothing you're gonna really learn about in the first game, you know. But we do know the Dodgers pitching is very good. We know that, and the Dodgers weren't even at full strength with their lineup. Right? There was no Mookie Betts. There was no Freddie Freeman in this game either. So, hopefully, they can get them back soon, which they will. And then you go from there. And then for the Cubs, hey, it's one game. It's one game. And, you don't really know what baseball teams are. Well, most of them. You don't know what they really are until we get to, the summertime. Because then you have more of a sample size of, hey, what is this team all about? But then again, and I hate to bring up the Yankees, but, the Yankees got off to a really good start last year, and then during the summer, it was very tough to watch them at times because of the injuries, and, they just were struggling. And that happens. We talked about it yesterday. The Dodgers, they went through a cold spell during the year as well. And they were missing a lot of guys. And they won the World Series with the shorthanded rotation. They didn't have their full cast. And despite that, they were still able to win it. So, but it's, like I said, just good to have it back. Tomorrow, you're going to have Roki Sasaki on the mound against Justin Steele. So another good pitching matchup tomorrow. We'll see what Sasaki does in his debut. But, the Dodgers, they're going to be a team that a lot of people are going to have to get used to watching because they're going to be on a lot of nationally televised games, as they should be, because of, them being World Series champs and because of who's on the team. They got stars all over the place. So, and already things are looking good in my my fantasy baseball matchup after this one game. I am currently up 10-0 in my matchup. We're actually doing categories for this one, and it's because of Teoscar Hernandez and Tanner Scott that we're doing well so far. But obviously that's going to change very quickly when games start next week. But and then I have Sasaki pitching tomorrow. I was able to draft him. Actually, I this is one of the 2 teams that I have for this year. We're doing 2 fantasy baseball leagues this year. How about that? Didn't really expect that to happen, but this is what we have for my fantasy baseball team. The first one. Got Austin Wells at catcher. I think he's going to have a very good year. Matt Olson hoping for a bounce back. Andres Jimenez at second base. Blue Jays acquired him in the offseason from the Guardians. Josh Young for the Rangers, hoping for a bounce back year for him. Gunnar Henderson of the Orioles, Teoscar Hernandez. I always talk about Teoscar Hernandez and how, he annoys me because he, really kills the Yankees every time he plays him. But I always draft him because he's a very good player. So I got him, Cody Bellinger, Christian Yelich, Corey Seager. Right now I have Suarez from the Diamondbacks in my utility spot. But on my bench, I have Nico Horner from the Cubs, Bryson Stott from the Phillies, Byron Buxton from the Twins, Mountcastle, and Jock Peterson. I think Jock Peterson was my last pick. I just didn't know who I was going to take with my last pick. But the pitching is going to be my strength. So I have Paul Skeens, Michael King, Tanner Scott, Pete Fairbanks, Tyler Glasnow, Zach Gallen, Roki Sasaki, Ronel Blanco, Merrill Kelly, and then I have Brendan Woodruff. And I actually got Ranger Suarez very late in my draft. And he had a very good first half last season. Kind of tailed off a little bit in the second half. But my pitching, I think, is very good. So I think that's what's going to carry me this year, and I think my lineup is pretty good as well. But we'll see what happens. So, yeah, and then I got another draft at some point. I don't know when, between now and, when the games start next week. So, yeah, looking forward to that. And then I was able to make the playoffs in my fantasy basketball league. I barely got in. I won last year, so hopefully, we make it 2 in a row. Although I do have Jalen Brunson, and he's obviously out. So, Anthony in the chat, good to hear from you. He says, if the Vikings bring in Aaron Rodgers, does this mean they already gave up on J.J. McCarthy and they might trade him? No, this does not mean that. What this means is that you bring in Aaron Rodgers, you give J.J. McCarthy more time to recover from his injury, you have him sit behind a first ballot Hall of Famer, you get to learn from him. And I know some people will roll their eyes at that, but you know what? Aaron Rodgers did mentor Jordan Love to an extent. And Jordan Love's a pretty good quarterback. He had a down year, but I think he's going to bounce back. So I think it would be smart for the Vikings to do that from that perspective. And I know some people, again, will say the culture, he's going to ruin the culture. No, he's not. He's not going to ruin the culture. He might be a distraction in people's eyes, but it's for 1 year. Maybe 2 years at most, and then you hand it off to J.J. McCarthy, and then maybe Rodgers doesn't play well, and you move on, you go to J.J. McCarthy sooner. I don't know, but no, I don't think this means they're going to trade J.J. McCarthy. I don't think so. I think maybe if they brought back Sam Darnold, you could maybe say that because Sam Darnold's much younger, but you're not bringing in a 41-year-old quarterback and then you're trading J.J. McCarthy. That's not happening. Because then you have no backup, you have no future. Then if you bring in Aaron Rodgers and you trade J.J. McCarthy. You're bringing in Aaron Rodgers because you want to give your own quarterback more time to recover from his injury. And also, get to learn from a first ballot Hall of Famer, like I said. Get to learn anything. It's not a bad thing. So, yeah, we talked about several different things there. Football, talked about baseball, we talked about basketball a little bit with fantasy basketball as well. Yeah, trying to get myself more involved in things. Because I went a very long time without doing fantasy baseball. I did it a lot, during the 2010s, but then I stopped because I was just like, I don't know why I stopped doing it. But then I was like, you know what, I got to get back into this. So I've been in it the last couple of years. My team collapsed last year. I was like the Jaguars from 2023. I was 8-3, I think, and then I just fell apart. My team just lost every game after that. And then I barely missed out on the playoffs. But I think the team I have here this year so far, I think that team's going to be pretty good. I think it's pretty good. The pitching, I think, is what's going to carry me. So we'll see how it goes. But, yeah, we got one game in the books with baseball. Dodgers pick up the win. And, yeah, we can expect many more wins coming from that team this season. Like I said, there's not a lot you're going to learn from the first game, but, the Dodgers bullpen, and their pitching in general is going to be very good. And the lineup's going to be good. It's not even at full strength yet. So, and then for the Cubs, like I said yesterday, I think there's pressure on them to do well this season. Because, you brought in Craig Counsell to be a difference maker. So, I just realized my camera was, I don't know what's going on now. Now I can't even, okay, there we go. I know, I was like, oh no, now my backup camera's not even working. That's not good. Yeah, so I don't know what happened there. But, yeah, so let me know what you guys think, though. If you got to see some of the highlights, I'll have to work on, the technical issues with the camera during the break because it's not cooperating with me right now. But yeah, let me know what you guys think if you watched some of the highlights from the game. We'll talk about the second game tomorrow. But we're going to take our final break of the show, and when we come back, we will talk about the Patriots. We'll do a season overview on the Patriots, and that will take us right to the end of the show. So for one final time today, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we are now going to do a season overview on the New England Patriots. We'll talk about their offseason as well. I like what they did on the defensive side of the ball, but they definitely need to, add more to the offense. So the Patriots, 2023 was forgettable, but 2024 was also kind of a forgettable year as well. There's definitely some more optimism. Well, there's a lot more optimism going into 2025 because the Patriots, I think, found their quarterback in Drake May. He didn't start right away because they didn't want him to start behind that offensive line. So they ended up throwing Jacoby Brissett to the Wolves. Now, to be fair, though, the Patriots did end up winning their first game of the year. Yeah, that's right. To the Cincinnati Bengals, who just paid their two receivers a lot of money. We talked about that yesterday. But yeah, they went into Cincy. They beat the Bengals 16-10. The biggest play of the game, there was a fumble by Tanner Hudson. Because the Bengals were going to go down and score. But Kyle Duggar ended up making a nice play on that, forcing the ball out. So that, led to the Patriots leading 10-0 after the first half. And, the Bengals didn't score till, late into the third quarter. But, yeah, Patriots ended up getting the win. You're like, wow, Patriots, nice. But then they proceeded to lose their next 6 games. They lost in overtime to the Seahawks. So the first couple weeks, you're like, wow, they've been, competitive in both these games. They could have very easily been 2-0. But then there was that Thursday night against the Jets, which we will talk about that from the Jets' perspective tomorrow when we go over their season. And that's probably one of the more anticipated season overviews that I've done so far. But yeah, from the Patriots' perspective, I mean, the Jets were that defense was just all over Jacoby Brissett. The Patriots could not get anything going. Ramondre Stevenson in that game, he had less than a point when it came to fantasy. He only had 6 carries for 23 yards. Because I was saying, well, the Jets are susceptible against the run. Patriots should be able to run the football. No, they were not able to run the football. And they ended up losing 24-3. Then against the 49ers, things didn't get any better. Fred Warner had that pick 6 in that game. So they lose that. They go to 1-3. Then they lose to the Dolphins. That was with Tyler Huntley at quarterback. They ended up winning against them. That was a game I thought the Patriots could win. And then this is where Drake May stepped in, week 6 against the Texans. Probably was not the best game to start him in Now, he did make some good plays. He had not a couple, but he had 3 touchdown passes in the game, did throw a couple of interceptions. But you were encouraged by what you saw in his debut. And how many times was he sacked in his debut? Because Texans defense is pretty good. He was sacked 4 times. And then they played against the Jaguars. Jaguars ended up winning 32-16 in that game. That was one of the international games. But then they ended up picking up the win against the Jets. Drake May ended up leaving the game early with a concussion. So Jacoby Brissett stepped in, and the Patriots ended up winning that game at the end. The offense went right down the field. Jets went up 22-17, and they let the Jets defense let the Patriots go right down the field and score a touchdown with no time left. Ramondre Stevenson scored a touchdown to make it 25 or 24-22. Or actually, no, they got the 2-point conversion. So they made it 23-22, and then they went for 2 and got it. So that made him 2-6 at that point. Then they lost to the Titans in overtime the following week. Drake May had that insane touchdown pass where he was scrambling around, and he threw it to Ramondre Stevenson with no time left to tie the game, but they ended up losing. Then they beat the Bears 19-3. That was an ugly game for the Bears. They lost to the Patriots, or they lost to the Rams. They lost to the Dolphins, again, with Tua being back. They lost by 1 to the Colts. Anthony Richardson threw a touchdown at the end there. Then they went into their bye. They lose to the Cardinals. They lost to the Bills. They actually were up by 14 points. They were up 14-0, but the Bills came back, won that game. But then they got blown out at home by the Chargers, 40-7. And I was close to taking the Patriots with the points in that game. Thankfully, I didn't, because otherwise I would have went 0-3 in that NFL Network triple header, which I have not done well with since they started doing that. And then you had Joe Milton, final game of the season. He could be someone that could get traded. He kind of impressed in that game against the Bills backups. 22 of 29 for 241 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. But, Patriots finished 4-13, last place in the AFC East. But I do think they will finish with more wins in 2025. I do believe that. They've been busy in the offseason. They brought in Mike Vrabel to be their next head coach. Yes, he's a better head coach than Gerard Mayo, but I don't like how what they did to Gerard Mayo. He wasn't given a lot to be successful. And they should have given him another chance, but they wanted Vrabel. And, so they brought him in. But they were busy this offseason. They also brought back Josh McDaniels as well. So I think, him and Drake May, I think that's going to work well. And, on defense, they brought in Harold Landry III from the Titans. He was cut by the Titans recently. They bring him in. He reunites with Vrabel. They bring in Robert Spillane, Carlton Davis, and Milton Williams, who just won the Super Bowl with the Eagles. They did sign Morgan Moses, who was with the Jets last year, to upgrade a tackle. They really need to, fix this offensive line for Drake May. They got to protect him. They brought in Matt Collins, who had a nice year with the Bills last year. And, they're picking in the top 5. So, I think they're taking a receiver. I think they're either taking a receiver or they're taking an offensive lineman. They need to add more playmakers to this side of the ball for Drake May. Now, you got Hunter Henry, tight end, Ramondre Stevenson coming out of the backfield. But you got to improve the offensive line and, get some receivers for Drake May. And there's still receivers out there. Like, they could go out, maybe they sign Stephon Diggs or, you sign Keenan Allen or something. Well, Keenan Allen wants to go to one of 2 places. But there's a lot they could do. But they spent a lot of money this offseason. And you look at last year, their defense ranked 22nd in total yards per game, 22nd in points allowed per game, and they were 10th in passing allowed and 23rd in stopping the run. So, and you added Carlton Davis to the secondary opposite of Christian Gonzalez, who's a good young player for them. So, the defense, had some issues, but they revamped it. The offense is really the bigger problem. their offensive line was 31st in pass blocking win rate and last in run blocking win rate. That's not good. They need to fix that. And, bringing in Morgan Moses will help. But looking at their offense, along with the offensive line, they were 32nd in passing yards per game. They were 13th in rushing yards per game. So that was, they did run the football well. Total yards per game, though, they were 31st. That's not good. Time of possession, they were 24th. Points again, well, that's the defensive stats. But yeah, offensively, they were towards the bottom. They have to improve that. And, Drake May, you look at his year, he finished with 15 touchdowns to 10 picks. Not the best touchdown interception ratio, 2,200 yards passing. I think he's going to have a better year next year. Ramondre Stevenson ran the ball for 801 yards and 7 touchdowns. They gave him a big contract in the offseason. Actually, Drake May also ran the ball for 421 yards, too, and 2 touchdowns. So, can also be a little athletic, running the football as well. But, yeah, their leading receiver, though, was Hunter Henry. You got to improve on that. You got Demario Davis, Kashawn Booty, Kendrick Bourne, Jalen Polk, who only had 87 yards receiving in his rookie year. He did have 2 touchdowns, but there's not a lot of elite talent on the offensive side of the ball, and they have to try to build this up. And I think you go after, if Travis Hunter falls to you, that's someone you go after. Tetairoa McMillan. I think that's where the Patriots could go, is playmaker, and then offensive line. Or maybe, like I said, maybe they trade down and they draft an offensive lineman. Who knows? But I think the Patriots will win more than 4 games next year. I really do believe that. I don't think they're going to I'm not going to sit here and say they're going to compete for a playoff spot, but I do think that you could see them maybe get 6 wins. I think you could see that. Slowly but surely make improvements there. But, you got the Dolphins and the Bills. The Bills are the class of the AFC East right now. And if the Dolphins have a healthy Tua, they're going to be a better team. But, if Tua gets hurt and misses some time, the Patriots could steal some wins there from the Dolphins, depending on how the schedule shakes out. If Tua gets hurt, which I don't want to see Tua get hurt. I don't think anybody wants to see that. But he misses time. That's what happens. And then the Jets, we'll see how they look with Justin Fields, and we'll talk about them tomorrow. So, but let me know what you guys think, though, about the Patriots season. Again, forgettable year for them. I think they're on their way back to being in the conversation in the AFC. At least when it comes to, being more competitive. Again, I still think maybe they're another year away, but who knows? I think they got a good head coach. I like the McDaniels move. They got the quarterback. The defense. I like the moves they made there. You just got to give Drake May more to work with now. So, yeah, that is pretty much it, though. With that is pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows on the network. Make sure to subscribe to both YouTube channels. Make sure to check us out wherever you get your podcasts, so you can listen to us as well. We appreciate all the support as always. Make sure to leave a like and comment on my videos as well. I'll try to get to your comments. So, as always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, signing off from the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.